Eye opener, who do they represent? A few years back, Princeton came out with a report showing that most laws in America only benefit the wealthy. In conclusion, the report stated that America was no longer a democracy, but was instead an oligarchy. It concluded this by looking at policies and laws in the U.S. and determining who benefited most from them. With that in mind, I decided to do a search to see what laws help the rich and simultaneously harm the rest of us. Following is the list that I came up with. For context, this may not be a complete list because the search was conducted with Google, a corporation known to provide biased search engine results that align with the establishment narrative. Whether this is a comprehensive list or not is less relevant than the extent to which these laws impacted the nation and its citizens. One last thing to note is that resources for this list, as well as links to articles or interviews with experts in the respective and relevant fields, will be provided, but may not be available at later dates. There could be an innocent reason behind any of the link provided going dead, or it could be the result of some nefarious scrubbing of the internet, a la Orwell's book, 1984. In my experience, those stories, articles, or interviews that put the establishment in a bad light oftentimes disappear. So much so that I have found it necessary to download these sources of proof and store them offline when possible. Thank God for the Wayback Machine for preserving the truth. Link 15 below. Here I present a list of key U.S. laws since 1995 that have benefited the wealthy while harming the majority of Americans. Number 1, Taxpayer Relief Act of 1997. Overview. This law reduced capital gains taxes, which disproportionately benefited wealthy individuals who earned a significant portion of their income from investments. Middle and lower income Americans, who rely more on wages than capital gains, saw minimal benefit. The impact. Wealthy individuals saw large reductions in their tax liabilities on capital income, further contributing to wealth inequality. Source. Public Integrity Center highlights the broader trend of tax cuts favoring the wealthy. Link 1 provided below. Number 2, Bush Tax Cuts, 2001 to 2003. Overview. These two laws, known as the Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act, 2001, and the Jobs and Growth Tax Relief Reconciliation Act, 2003, significantly reduced income tax rates, especially for the highest earners. The impact. The top 1% benefited the most, while middle-class tax cuts were temporary and smaller in scale. The cuts contributed to rising deficits, which have been used to justify reductions in public spending, disproportionately harming lower-income Americans. Source. The Center for American Progress notes that these cuts exacerbated existing inequalities. Link 2 provided below. Number 3, Citizens United v. FEC 2010. Overview. The Supreme Court ruling in Citizens United allowed unlimited corporate and individual spending on political campaigns. This has given the wealthy even more influence in politics by enabling massive donations through super PACs and dark money organizations. The impact. The ruling led to a surge in political spending by the wealthy, which has skewed political influence toward policies that benefit them at the expense of the broader public. Source. Brennan Center for Justice discusses how the ruling entrenched the political power of wealthy individuals. Link 3 provided below. Number 4, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 2017. Overview. Signed into law by President Trump, this act reduced the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21% and provided tax cuts primarily benefiting the wealthy, including a reduction in the top individual tax rate and a large increase in the estate tax exemption. The impact. The wealthiest Americans saw significant tax cuts, while middle and lower income individuals received much smaller benefits. The tax cuts for individuals are set to expire, while corporate cuts are permanent. The law is projected to increase the national debt, which could lead to cuts in social programs that benefit the majority. Source. The Center for American Progress critiques the law for worsening inequality. Link 4 provided below. Number 5, in a repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, 1999. Overview. The repeal of Glass-Steagall through the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act removed the separation between commercial and investment banking, enabling banks to engage in risky financial activities. The impact. This deregulation allowed for the financial practices that contributed to the 2008 financial crisis, which harmed millions of Americans through job losses and home foreclosures, while many bankers and wealthy investors were bailed out. Source: Public Integrity Center highlights the deregulation trends that contributed to rising inequality. Link 5 provided below. Number 6. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, 1899. This is the law that repealed the Glass-Steagall Act, which stabilized the U.S. economy for 50 years after the Great Depression. The effect: repealed parts of the Glass-Steagall Act, allowing commercial banks to engage in investment activities contributing to the 2008 financial crisis. This deregulation benefited wealthy investors and corporations, while middle and lower-income Americans bore the brunt of the financial fallout through job losses and home foreclosures. Link 6 provided below. And the list goes on. Policies and laws created to help the richest among us. Wealth and capital gains loopholes. The failure of the U.S. tax system to tax income from wealth at the same rate as income from work allows the richest Americans to pay a significantly lower, true tax rate. Billionaires often pay as little as 3.4% due to loopholes, such as deferrals on capital gains and the stepped-up basis, which lets heirs avoid taxes on inherited wealth. This system benefits the ultra-wealthy, allowing them to accumulate wealth tax-free. Erosion of corporate taxes. Over the years, corporate taxes have significantly decreased, benefiting shareholders and executives. The decline in corporate tax rates, especially under TCJA, shifted the tax burden to working Americans. This period has coincided with surging corporate profits and stagnating wages, further worsening income inequality. IRS enforcement bias. The IRS has been weakened in its ability to audit and enforce tax laws for the wealthy. In contrast, low-income households, particularly those claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit, are disproportionately targeted for audits. This disparity in enforcement leaves a large share of taxes from the richest Americans uncollected. Rising costs for middle-class essentials. While the wealthy benefited from favorable tax policies, middle-class Americans have faced stagnating wages and increasing costs for essentials like healthcare, housing, and education. A detailed analysis from the Center for American Progress shows that between 2000 and 2012, the cost of middle-class security rose by over 30%, while median family incomes barely increased. And check for information on wealth concentration and legislative proposals like the Oligarch Act, aimed at reversing the trend of wealth accumulation among the top 0.1%. These laws and decisions have consistently favored the wealthy, contributing to growing income inequality in the U.S., while eroding benefits and protections for the majority. The economic benefits of these policies are concentrated among the top income earners, while the broader population faces increased economic insecurity and reduced public services. If you need further proof, here you go. U.S. laws and policies that have benefited the wealthy at the expense of the majority, with supporting evidence and links to more detailed analysis. Commodity Futures Modernization Act, or CFMA, of 2000. Overview. This law deregulated the derivatives market, allowing financial institutions to engage in risky trades with little oversight. It played a significant role in the 2008 financial crisis. The impact: the deregulation favored wealthy investors and large financial institutions, while middle and lower income Americans were left to deal with the economic fallout of the crisis through job losses, foreclosures, and the depletion of savings. Deficit Reduction Act of 2005. Overview. This law cut federal spending on entitlement programs such as Medicaid, student loans, and social services, while allowing wealthy individuals and corporations to benefit from favorable tax and financial policies. The impact: while reducing federal aid for lower-income households, the wealthy saw less disruption to their benefits. This increased the burden on the middle class, especially in healthcare and education. Job Creation and Worker Assistance Act, 2002. Overview. This act provided significant tax incentives for corporations, particularly in the form of bonus depreciation, which allowed businesses to write off the cost of capital investments more rapidly. The impact: the law primarily benefited corporations and their shareholders, who are disproportionately wealthy. Meanwhile, it did little to support middle-income workers, contributing to stagnating wages and rising inequality. Evidence provided in link 7 below. It is a report about how the benefits in the act mostly flowed to corporate executives and wealthy shareholders, while the wage growth promised by trickle-down policies failed to materialize. Petition to End the Job Creator Lie in link 9 below. Welfare Reform, Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act, 1996. Overview. Signed by President Clinton, this law transformed welfare by imposing work requirements and time limits on benefits, cutting the social safety net for millions of low-income Americans. The impact: while intended to reduce dependence on government assistance, the law has left many struggling families without adequate support, particularly during economic downturns. The wealthy, meanwhile, continued to benefit from tax cuts and deregulation during the same period. Corporate-Friendly Bankruptcy Reform, 2005. Overview. The Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act made it more difficult for individuals to declare bankruptcy, especially middle-income earners with significant credit card debt, while corporations retained favorable conditions for their bankruptcy processes. The impact: this law protected banks and credit card companies, allowing them to recoup more money from individuals, but hurt middle-class Americans struggling with debt by limiting their ability to start over financially. Evidence provided in link 10 below. Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, 2010. Overview. Although designed to curb the excesses that led to the 2008 financial crisis, subsequent weakening of key provisions has allowed financial institutions to sidestep some of the protections. The impact: the rollbacks of these regulations, such as reduced oversight on mid-sized banks, benefited financial institutions, while middle-class consumers remain vulnerable to financial instability. Evidence provided in link 11 below. These laws highlight a broader trend of legislation that prioritizes the interests of wealthy individuals and corporations, often at the expense of working-class and low-income Americans. As these policies have allowed the rich to accumulate more wealth, income inequality has risen, leaving the majority of Americans struggling with stagnant wages, rising costs of living, and a weakened social safety net. For more detailed analysis on these laws and their impacts, see sources like those provided in links 12, 14 below. To find out other ways you're being screwed by your current leaders, check out the posts on this blog daily. Learn about the biggest and worst issues that America and its people face today. You can also check in to also learn about those issues that America and its people will face in the near and distant future. If, however, you would like to learn about possible solutions to either mitigate the worst impacts of these issues or solutions to avoid them altogether, keep listening. The problems we face are not as complicated as so many leaders and news reports claim. They are man-made and are only claimed as complicated so those who are responsible can maintain control. For example, there is a persistent argument that moving government is like turning a cruise ship around. It is supposedly a long process that can only be achieved incrementally. While this may be true for laws and policies that benefit the majority of Americans, it does not seem to be so for that smallest of American minorities. When one examines the policies and laws that benefit that minority, known as the elite or the rich, the speed at which those laws are passed is exponentially faster. While most of us sit on the deck chairs waiting for the Titanic to avoid the myriad of icebergs of which we seem to continually run afoul, the elite ride comfortably in speedboats. If, according to our Constitution, all men are created equal, why do the rich live quite different lives than the rest of us? Where is our speedboat? In 2018, Chris Osman wrote a book highlighting the problems humanity would face if more power, wealth, and control were funneled to a small cohort of individuals, groups, or organizations. In that book, Mr. Osman provided solutions, from himself and others, to the inevitable problems we would all face. In it, he also provided a means for the public to analyze, compare, and contrast the words and deeds of those we've chosen to follow against our real-world experiences. To this end, Mr. Osman provides the means for readers to disseminate information as provided by their news sources of choice, their elected officials, and any other authority they choose to follow. The book, titled Solutions, Enough Complaining, Let's Fix America, offers a means to hold leaders up to not just a higher standard than is currently accepted, but one that will improve lives. If we should defund anything, it should be the rich. Click the link below and get your copy today.